And that brings us to Rishi Sunak, right? And this very specific issue. I don't care how rich he is. I think his wife should pay the same proportion of her income that we do. I think the Prime Minister's wife or husband or civil partner being a non-dom is obviously ridiculous. I think it's outrageous that she continues to draw money from a company still doing business in Vladimir Putin's Russia. These are enormous problems. Again, dishonest people will pretend that this is some sort of portrayal of a wife as being a chattel. Absolute nonsense. The seat of power in this country is sanctioning Russia, and the wife of the man in the seat of power is taking 12.5 million quid out of a company that is still doing business in Vladimir Putin's Russia 6 months after saying they'd be leaving. That's not even a debate or an opinion. That's just plainly wrong. And in a country that didn't have such a ludicrously biased media, it would not be tolerated. But that's not the story that we're talking about today. The story that we're talking about today is the fact that the Prime Minister's family is on the books of a private GP practice that offers on-the-day surgeries. Right. I don't know whether you've got a problem with private GPs practices. I think there's a naivety in opposition to some wealth-based privilege. I think that if my daughters were ill and I could afford to do it, if I could spend money to save their lives, even if it broke the law, never mind my own moral code, I would do it. It seems to me ridiculous to expect people not to use whatever they have at their disposal, whether it's their innate intelligence, their charm, their fast car, their bank balance, or their contacts and connections to help either themselves or their loved ones. That's a fundamental part of human nature that perhaps communism ignores, although that's a conversation for a different day. The problem is this, is that he is the Prime Minister. And he is part of a clinic that charges £250 for a half-hour consultation that you can access more or less whenever you want. It also offers appointments in the evenings and at weekends, as well as consultations by email or phone costing up to £150. This is not a conversation about whether or not such services should exist, all right? We may have that conversation on another day, and we may agree or disagree about what our answer to that question is. But this is not that day. This is not a conversation about whether or not private GP surgeries exist, should exist, or should not exist. For the record, I do not avail myself of such a service, but I am quite open about the fact that if my family's health or welfare depended on it and writing a cheque or spending some money could improve their situation, I would not hesitate to do it, and nor would you. Should I be able to? Is not the conversation that we're having today. The conversation we're having today is, I think, a desperately serious one. And it is this: how the hell can this man assume responsibility for a health service when he has no personal exposure whatsoever to the trouble in which it currently finds itself? God forbid he should need to go to hospital, or his family should need to go to hospital, in which case the choices are limited. The option to go private for some very serious interventions is not as great as the option to avail yourself of a private GP. But when you look at the decline in patient satisfaction since 2010, when patient satisfaction with the National Health Service was the highest as it had ever been, wave your magic wand, in come the Conservatives, and today, 12 years later, I think it's the lowest, with more problems on the horizon, with industrial action happening because the nurses have been taken for granted so horribly for so long, with successive Conservative Secretary of States for Health presiding over what looks like managed decline, possibly as a softening up process for further privatisation in the future. I find it ridiculous and not a little repellent that the Prime Minister, who bleats endlessly about being from an NHS family, does not have to rely upon an NHS GP for his and his family's healthcare. I think it's really, really important. And I've been trying too hard lately to see both sides of an argument. I've been trying too hard lately to avoid the idea that I'm constantly criticising the Conservatives. This isn't about Conservatives. This isn't about politics in general. It's about a very specific problem, and the problem is this: how can we trust this man to, quote, fix the NHS when he is not a victim of its problems? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060973. I'd like to be wrong. I know I say that a lot and it sometimes sounds a little glib or trite or possibly even dishonest, but it's tiring pointing out the constant hypocrisy and unfairness of our political system at the moment. I'd love there to be a morning where someone could successfully persuade me that this isn't egregious or problematic or outrageous at all. But how the hell can we all be expected to sit here going, oh, yes, Rishi, no, Rishi, 3 bags full, Rishi, you do the NHS, Rishi, great work, going to improve it all. So what is the problem? Well, I don't know. My family don't go anywhere near it. It's just outrageous. How tightly round your neck would your Tory scarf need to be knotted for you not to feel the fundamental absurdity and injustice of having a Prime Minister in charge of a health service that he spends £250 a pop to avoid the problems of? As I said, you might have a job this morning persuading me that I'm wrong, but I would welcome the experience.